A 5-year-old girl almost broke the most powerful criminal organization in Seoul. Not with a weapon, not with a document, with a question. I was already at the gate when I saw the photo drop into my DMs. Someone at Incheon Airport had caught it. Candid, raw, no filter. Kang Seojun, boss of the Cheongryong syndicate, standing 20 meters from a woman, not moving, not speaking, just staring. Like a man who had seen a ghost, he buried himself. And the woman? Walking away, head down, hand gripping a little girl beside her so tight the child looked up, confused, and said something. Whatever that child said made Kang Seojun go completely, absolutely still. I zoomed in on his face in that photo for a long time, and I thought, this man is not angry. He is terrified. So I have one question before we even begin. What was he so afraid that little girl might say next? Let me set the scene for you properly, because the media got it wrong, as they always do. Every outlet ran the same lazy headline. Kang Seojun spotted with mystery woman at Incheon. They treated it like a tabloid flicker, a one-day story, a photo that would fade by Monday. I treated it like the beginning of something massive. Because I know who Kang Seojun is, not the version his PR team sells, the philanthropist, the retired businessman, the man who donates to children's hospitals and gets photographed with politicians at charity galas in Gangnam. I mean the real version. The one that serious journalists in Seoul talk about only in whispers and only in private. Cheongryong, the Blue Dragon Syndicate, operating in the gray spaces between construction, logistics, and things that don't have official names. This man does not get surprised. He does not get caught off guard. He controls rooms. He controls people. He has a team of advanced security that clears locations before he walks through them. And yet, there he was, at a public airport. No buffer. No handler between him and this woman. Just him, standing in the middle of a terminal, completely exposed, staring at her like the ground had shifted under his feet. The woman was Zola. I didn't know her name yet at that point, but I would. She was moving fast. Rolling a carry-on bag, backpack on, sunglasses on despite being indoors. The posture of someone who travels like they're always one step ahead of something. Beside her, holding her hand, a little girl. 5 years old maybe, bright dress, butterfly clip in her hair. And this child, this tiny, innocent, completely unbothered child, noticed a tall man staring at her mother. So she did what 5-year-olds do. She asked him, right to his face, loud enough that 2 people nearby turned to look. "Why are you looking at mommy?" The witness who sent me the photo was standing close enough to hear it. She said Kang Seojun crouched down, slowly, like a man who hadn't knelt in front of a child in years. And he didn't answer immediately. He just looked at the little girl's face, really looked. And Zola? She snatched her daughter's hand, said one sharp word in a language the witness didn't recognize, and walked. Fast. Through the gate. Gone. Kang Seojun stood back up, straightened his jacket. And according to my source, his hands were shaking. Kang Seojun's hands were shaking. I want you to understand the weight of that detail. This is not a man who shakes. This is a man who makes other people shake. So when I got that photo, I didn't write the easy story. I started pulling threads. Zola. Where was she from? Where had she been? Why was she at Incheon? Was she arriving or leaving? And more importantly, how did she know him? Because one thing was already obvious to me, even before I made a single call. That woman was not a stranger to him. And that little girl, those eyes in the zoomed photo, I'd seen eyes like that before. In a profile piece, in a press photo, in the face of a man who was currently standing in an airport, shaking. But I needed more before I could say what I was already thinking. So I started digging. I pulled her travel records, and what I found out about where Zola had been for the last 6 years, it didn't just answer my questions. It opened a door I was not prepared to walk through. Here's what the photo didn't show. Zola wasn't arriving at Incheon that day. She was transiting. 40-minute layover. Flight in from Nairobi. Connection to Jakarta. She was not supposed to be in Korea long enough for anyone to see her. She was not supposed to be visible. That 40-minute window was an accident. And someone in Kang Seojun's network, and yes, he has people at that airport, I'm not going to pretend otherwise, flagged her the moment her passport was scanned. So when Zola stepped into that terminal, she already knew she might be seen. She had her glasses on. She had her daughter close. She was moving. She just didn't move fast enough. Now, here is where it gets complicated. Because I started looking into Zola's history in Korea, and what I found was not a love story. It was not a scandal in the way gossip journalists usually mean. It was something quieter and more serious. Zola had lived in Seoul 6.5 years ago. She had a work visa, legitimate employment at an international logistics firm, which, and I want you to note this, had documented ties to a Cheongryong-affiliated holding company. She was not low-level. She was a senior operations coordinator, fluent in Korean, French, Swahili, and English. She was brilliant. Everyone I spoke to who remembered her said the same thing. Brilliant, calm, and then one day, gone. No resignation letter on file. Visa not renewed. Apartment cleared out overnight. The official version was that she returned home for a family emergency. The unofficial version, the one her former colleague whispered to me over a phone call that she asked me to keep off the record, was different. She left because she had to. Something happened. We were told not to ask questions about her. Told by who? The colleague went quiet. Just don't ask questions about her. That's what we were told. Now, I want to connect something for you. Zola disappears from Seoul 6.5 years ago. Her daughter, based on what that airport witness described, the child's approximate age, the butterfly clip, the size of her, is 5 years old. Maybe just turned 5. You do that math with me. I did it standing in my apartment at 2 in the morning, and I sat down because my legs stopped working properly for a second. Because if I was right, and I was starting to believe I was, then Zola didn't just leave Seoul to escape a job. She left Seoul to protect something, or someone. And Kang Seo-jun, standing in that airport, shaking, staring at a child with his own eyes set into a different face, had just found out that what he thought was gone was very much alive. I needed to find Zola. I needed to get to Jakarta before his people did. I found her. She was hiding in plain sight. And when I knocked on her door and said my name, she didn't slam it. She opened it wider, because she had been waiting, not for him, for someone exactly like me. And what she told me in that apartment changed every single thing I thought I knew about this story. Jakarta, 3rd floor walk-up, ceiling fan, floor. 2 cups of tea she made before I could even ask. Zola already knew I was coming, not because she was warned, because she had been watching the story develop online, the airport photo, the speculation, the wrong headlines, and she had made a decision, a calculated one. The decision of a woman who has spent 6 years thinking 3 steps ahead. She was done hiding in silence. But she was choosing who would tell her story. And she chose me. I want to describe her to you because I think it matters. She was composed in a way that only people who have survived real fear can manage. Still, measured. Every sentence she gave me was thought out, not rehearsed, but considered. Like a woman who had replayed this moment in her mind for years and finally decided exactly which words were worth saying out loud. She confirmed what I suspected. Yes, she had worked for the logistics company in Seoul. Yes, she had encountered Kang Seo-jun through that work. No, she would not describe the relationship in full detail. That part, she said, was private, and I respected it. What she would tell me was this. When she discovered she was pregnant, she did not tell him immediately. She needed time to think, to understand what it meant, not personally, but practically. What it meant to be carrying the child of a man who operated the way Kang Seo-jun operated. She did her research, quietly, carefully, and what she found terrified her. Not because he was violent toward her. She was clear about this, deliberate about this, and I believed her. But because she understood that a child connected to him would not have a normal life, would not have a safe life, would be a bargaining chip, a vulnerability, a target in feuds that had nothing to do with an innocent little girl in a butterfly clip. So Zola made a choice. She left. No note, no forwarding address. She liquidated what she could, called in every favor, and disappeared through a network of people she trusted. Family, old university friends, a church community in Nairobi that asked no questions and gave only shelter. She gave birth to her daughter in her mother's house in Kinshasa. She named her Selene. Selene. She said it to me, and then she looked out the window for a moment, just a breath, before looking back. I asked her, Did you ever consider telling him? She looked at me, calm, direct. Every single day, for 6 years, every single day I made the same decision again. I asked her if she regretted it. She said, I regret that my daughter doesn't have a simple life. I don't regret keeping her safe. And then, and this is the part that stopped my pen, she told me about the airport. She said she knew the risk of transiting through Incheon. She had done it once before, 2 years ago, without incident. She thought 40 minutes, keep moving, no eye contact, you'll be fine. But Solen saw him first. Saw him first. This child, who has never been shown a photograph of her father, who has never heard his name spoken in her home, saw a tall man staring at her mother with an expression she didn't understand. And so she asked the question, Why are you looking at mommy? Zola said when she heard Solen's voice. Her entire body went cold. She turned. She saw him crouched down, looking at Solen's face. And Zola said, quietly to me, in that Jakarta apartment with the ceiling fan turning overhead, he knew. The moment he looked at her, he knew. I asked her, What happens now? She wrapped both hands around her teacup. Now? Now the question is whether the truth protects us or puts us in more danger. I had no answer for her. Not yet, but I was about to find out. Because 20 minutes after I left her building, I got back to my hotel and found something on my door. No name, no signature. Just a folded note with 4 words written in Korean. Stop writing about this. A note on my hotel door was just the opening move. What came next was not a warning, it was a demonstration. And when I tell you what Kang Seojin's people did to show me they were serious, you will understand exactly why Zola ran 6 years ago. And you will understand why I kept writing anyway. 4 words on a piece of paper. Stop writing about this. I stood in the hallway of my Jakarta hotel holding that note, and I did 2 things. First, I photographed it immediately, both sides. The paper type, the fold, the ink color. Evidence first, panic later. That's the rule I give myself when a story starts pushing back. Second,
안녕, 여러분. Before you continue, if this story touched something in you, you should know I didn't tell everything yet. The complete version has 20 full audio episodes. No interruptions, no ads. Just the story, the emotions, and the moments I couldn't fit in here. If you scan the QR code on your screen, or tap the link in the pinned comment to continue listening right now.
I called my editor in London and told him to timestamp everything we had so far and store it off-site. Not because I was walking away, because I needed insurance. When powerful people send notes instead of lawyers, it means they're operating outside the legal system. And when you're outside the legal system, documentation is the only armor you've got. Let me be precise about what I mean when I say Kang Seojin's organization put pressure on me. I want to be careful here because I refuse to make this sound dramatic in a way that glorifies what they do. What they do is not glamorous. It is not cinematic. It is slow, grinding, deeply unpleasant intimidation designed to make people feel small and isolated and afraid. It started with the note, clearly placed there while I was inside Zola's building, which meant I had been followed from the moment I landed in Jakarta, possibly before. Which meant someone had been monitoring the story online and had already identified me as the journalist pursuing it. That was a 12-hour turnaround from the airport photo going viral. 12 hours. That is an organization with resources and with reach. The second move came the next morning. My fixer in Jakarta, a brilliant local journalist named Hendra, who had helped me navigate 3 previous stories in Southeast Asia, called me at 7 a.m. His voice was completely flat. He told me he couldn't work with me on this story. He said it without explanation, without apology, in the tone of a man who has already made up his mind and doesn't want to discuss it further. I asked him if he was okay. He said yes. I asked him if someone had contacted him. Long pause. Renata, please be careful. He hung up. So now I was in Jakarta without a fixer, with a note on my door and with a story that was clearly significant enough for Cheongryong to mobilize internationally within half a day. I want to sit with that for a second. Internationally, Jakarta is not Seoul. This was not a local operation slapping down a local reporter. This was a transnational reach-out, quiet and precise, designed to isolate me without making noise. They did not threaten me physically. I want to be clear about that. But they didn't need to. The message was architectural. We know where you are. We know who helps you. We can remove the floor under your feet without touching you. That is a more sophisticated threat than violence. And it is, in many ways, more effective. But here is what they miscalculated. They didn't know that Zola had already decided to go fully on record. I got back to her building that same morning and I told her everything. The note, Hendra, all of it. All. I put it on the table because she deserved to make an informed decision about how far she wanted to take this. She listened, didn't flinch. And then she reached into the drawer of the small wooden desk in the corner of her apartment, and she pulled out a folder. A physical folder. Manila, slightly worn at the edges, held shut with a rubber band. She put it on the table between us and she looked at me steadily. I have been keeping this for 6 years, she said, in case I ever needed it. I kept it because I always knew this day would come. I looked at the folder. I looked at her. What is it? She pressed her hand flat on top of it, not opening it yet, making sure I was ready. It is everything. Documents, communications, photographs, a timeline, everything that connects Kang Seojin to what happened the year I left Seoul. Everything that proves why I had no choice but to run. I am a journalist. I have been doing this for 11 years. I have held leaked documents in government buildings. I have sat with whistleblowers in parking garages. I have been in rooms with sources so scared they typed instead of spoke. But something about the way Zola placed her hand on that folder, the quietness of it, the 6 years of weight of it, made me feel the gravity of the moment completely. Because this was not just a personal story anymore. This was documentation, and documentation changes everything. I reached across the table and I looked at her, and I asked permission before I touched it. She nodded once. I opened the folder. And I understood immediately why Kang Seojun wanted this story dead. What was inside that folder wasn't just proof of a secret child. It was proof of something that went all the way to the top. Names I recognized, transactions with dates and amounts, a paper trail that Zola had been quietly building from the inside before she disappeared. And when I tell you whose name appeared on the 3rd page, someone currently sitting in a position of significant public trust in Seoul, you are going to understand why this story is so much bigger than one man and one woman and one little girl in a butterfly clip. I am going to tell you what was in that folder. But I need you to understand the sequence, because the sequence matters. Because it's not just what the documents revealed. It's the order in which the picture assembled itself that made the revelation so completely devastating. The first layer was personal. Records that placed Kang Seojin and Zola in documented professional proximity. Meeting logs, itineraries, communications through official company channels that showed a pattern of interaction over approximately 14 months. Nothing illegal in that layer. Just the architecture of 2 people whose lives intersected at a specific point in time. The second layer was where it became complicated. Zola had documented a period, roughly 4 months before she left Seoul, during which she became aware of specific financial operations moving through the logistics company where she worked. She was not looking for this information. It surfaced through her actual job. She was a senior coordinator. Numbers went across her desk. And at a certain point, the numbers stopped making operational sense. She was smart enough to recognize that, and careful enough to start quietly copying things. What she had documented was a layered financial structure, shell companies, transit accounts, paper movements, that suggested the logistics firm was being used to process funds that had no legitimate commercial origin. She didn't have the full picture. She's not a forensic accountant. But she had pieces, real pieces. Dated, time-stamped, attached to names. And one of those names was not Kang Seojin. One of those names was a man I will call, because I am a careful journalist who does not publish accusations without full verification, a senior regulatory figure in Seoul. Someone whose job, theoretically, is to investigate exactly this kind of financial activity. Someone who had, in fact, publicly overseen 2 high-profile investigations into organized crime financing in the past 3 years. Investigations that, I now note, both resulted in no prosecutions. Zola did not fully understand the weight of what she was holding when she copied those documents. She understood enough to be frightened. She understood enough to run. But the complete significance of that 3rd page, that name, only becomes clear when you know what that person's public role is now. She didn't know. She had been in Jakarta, then Nairobi, then Kinshasa, Then back to Jakarta, raising Solen, staying off the grid, staying off social media, staying small. When I laid it out for her, the current role, the investigations, the timeline, she stared at me for a long time. He is supposed to be investigating people like Kang Seojun, she said. Yes, she absorbed that. Then who has been protecting him all this time? And there it was, the real question. Not the romantic question, the important one. The one with actual consequence. The reason the note appeared on my hotel door within 12 hours of the airport photo. Not because Kang Seojun was afraid of a love story getting out. Love stories are manageable. Love stories are nothing to a man like him. He was afraid because Zola had walked through that airport. Zola, who he believed had simply vanished. And he did not know what she was carrying. He did not know if she had talked. He did not know if that folder existed. And now I had it. I had it photographed, backed up, encrypted, sent to 3 separate secure locations, and partially shared with 2 colleagues in Seoul and London before the sun went down. But here is the part of this chapter that I need to tell you carefully, because it is the part that changed the emotional center of this story completely. That evening, after hours of documentation work, after the calls and the backups and the careful journalist machinery of protecting a source and protecting evidence, Zola's daughter Solen came out of the back room. She had been drawing. She brought her drawing to the table and set it down between us with the absolute confidence of a 5-year-old presenting important work. It was a drawing of 3 figures. Crayon. A tall figure, a medium figure, presumably Zola, and a small figure holding both their hands. I looked at it. I looked at Zola. Zola was very still. Who is the tall one? I asked Solen gently. Solen pointed at the tall crayon figure like it was obvious. The man at the airport, she said. He was looking at Mommy like she was important. The room was completely silent. Zola reached over and folded her daughter into her arms without saying a word. And I sat across from them with a folder full of documentation that could dismantle a corrupt protection network, and I understood fully for the first time what this story was really about. It was not about crime. It was not about money. It was about a woman who ran to protect a child who drew her father into a family portrait without ever having been told his name. Some truths, it turns out, cannot be hidden. Not fully. Not forever. Not even from a 5-year-old with a butterfly clip and a box of crayons. The folder went to my legal team in Seoul that night. And 2 days later, 2 days, something happened that none of us expected. Not me. Not Zola. And based on everything I know about him, not Kang Seojun either, because he made a move that nobody in his organization would have predicted. A move that had nothing to do with power or protection or damage control. A move that looked from the outside almost like something else entirely. Something that starts with the word human. And the outcome of that move? Changed everything. I have covered a lot of stories in 11 years. I have reported on people at their absolute worst. The greed, the calculation, the cold machinery of people who hurt others for advantage. And I will be honest with you. This story, going in, felt like it was heading in that direction. Another powerful man. Another woman who paid the price for his world. Another child caught between. I was wrong. Not about the corruption. That part is real, and that part is still moving through legal channels in Seoul as I record this. The documentation Zola provided has been submitted through proper legal avenues and is being handled by people significantly more qualified than me to pursue it. That part of the story is not over. It is, in fact, just beginning. But what I was wrong about was him. Let me tell you what Kang Seojun did. 2 days after the folder went to my legal team, 2 days after the story began moving in ways that would clearly be impossible to stop, Zola received a message. Not a threat, not a legal notice, not a representative or a lawyer or a handler. A personal message. From him, directly. He asked to meet, in public, her choice of location, her conditions. He would come alone. Zola called me before she responded. She read me the message. I asked her what she wanted to do. She was quiet for a long moment. I want to hear what he says, she said. They met at a cafe near the waterfront in Jakarta. Zola told me every detail afterward, sitting in that same apartment, and I am going to relay it to you as close to her words as I can get. He arrived before her, sat at the table she had specified. No security visible, though she assumed they were nearby, and she had her own precautions in place. He stood when she arrived. Old world courtesy from a man who built his world in the shadows. She found that detail almost funny. Almost. He did not open with an explanation or a justification. He did not try to negotiate or manage the situation. He said, "I would like to know her name." That was his opening, not an apology, not a strategy. Her name. Zola looked at him for a long time before she answered. Solène. He repeated it, quietly, like he was memorizing it. And then, "And I want you to understand that Zola is not a sentimental person. This is a woman of exceptional precision and self-possession." He said he understood why she left. That he had spent 2 days thinking about nothing else. That when he looked at Solène's face at the airport, he didn't see a complication. He saw something he had never allowed himself to want, because he had decided, years ago, that the life he led had no room for it. "I am not asking for anything," he told her. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. I just needed to say, she deserved better than the world I would have put her in. You were right to protect her. I'm sorry that protecting her meant running from me." Zola told me she didn't cry. She said she had done all her crying for this man years ago and had nothing left in that category. But she said something shifted. The weight of 6 years of looking over her shoulder, of making every decision twice.
If you made it to the end, you already understand this isn't just another story. What you watched here is only a fragment. The full experience lives in 20 complete audio episodes, carefully told, with every detail, every emotion, every turning point. There are no ads, no interruptions, and nothing was removed like it is on YouTube. You can listen anytime on your phone with total privacy, inside the members-only area. Scan the QR code on your screen now, or tap the link in the pinned comment to unlock the full story and continue listening immediately.
Of choosing every route and every city and every school based on the risk calculation of being found. She looked at him and she said, "She asked about you, after the airport. She said the tall man looked at me like I was important." He didn't respond to that immediately. Then he said, "She was right. I am not going to tell you that this became a fairy tale. Life does not work that way, and Zola would be the first person to tell you that. They are not together. That ship sailed, and neither of them is trying to rebuild it. The trust that would require, the history between them. All of it is complicated in ways that cannot be resolved in a cafe conversation. But Zola told me that she and Kang Seojin have begun, carefully and slowly and with significant legal scaffolding around the entire arrangement, discussing what a safe, protected connection between Solène and her father might eventually look like. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, child-led as it should be. With Zola holding full authority over every step. She is no longer looking over her shoulder in the same way. Because the thing she was most afraid of, Solène being taken, being used, being put in danger, has been addressed with documentation and legal protection that makes it significantly harder. And the regulatory story, the corruption documentation, is moving forward completely separately, in the hands of people who pursue that work professionally. Zola gave her statement. It is on record. Whatever comes of it, she is protected as a witness. She told me the last thing I'll share with you from our interview. She said it standing at her window looking out toward the water with Solène making noise in the back room. I kept that folder for 6 years because I was afraid. I gave it away because I was finally more tired of being afraid than I was afraid of the consequences. And the strange thing is, the moment I gave it away, I felt light for the first time in 6 years. She turned from the window and she smiled. A real one. Solène asked me this morning if the tall man from the airport has a name. I asked her what she said. I told her, yes. And that one day, when the time is right, she can decide if she wants to know it. That is where I'll leave this chapter. Not wrapped up perfectly, not cleaned up for the easy ending, but real, and moving forward, and light. Here's what keeps me up at night about this story. Zola ran for 6 years to protect a little girl from a world she didn't ask to be born into. And the whole time, that little girl was drawing that world into her crayon pictures anyway. You cannot outrun what a child carries in her blood. You cannot hide a truth that lives in someone's face. The corruption case in Seoul is still open. The documents are in the right hands. And the man at the center of all of this is navigating something he has never navigated before. Accountability. On multiple fronts, simultaneously. So I need to ask you 2 things, and I need you to answer honestly in the comments below. Was Zola a hero for running, or did Selene have the right to know her father all along? And if a 5-year-old's question can crack open a criminal empire, what other secrets in Seoul are one innocent moment away from shattering before you go? There is something I did not include in this story. Something Zola showed me at the very end of our last meeting. After the recorder was off, after the folder was closed, after we had said our goodbyes. A photograph. Not from the folder. Personal. Old. A photograph of Kang Seo-jun that Zola had kept hidden inside the lining of her suitcase for 6 years. Carried through every city, every apartment, every border crossing. I asked her why she kept it. She looked at it for a moment before sliding it back into its hiding place. Because Selene is going to want to know what he looked like when he was just a man, before everything else. I wanted her to see that version existed. There is a second story here, one that starts not with the scandal, but with how it began. Who Kang Seo-jun was before Cheongryong. What Zola saw in him that made her stay as long as she did. And what the people around him did to make sure that version of him, the one in the photograph, could never survive. That story is coming. And it starts with a name Zola mentioned only once, in a whisper, right before she closed the door. A name that appears in 0 public records in South Korea. But a name that apparently every single person inside Cheongryong knows. Who is she? And what did she do to both of them?